changes. Only the exhaustion of diplomacy.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome AIPAC National Board Member Lillian Pincus.
We've had so far, and we have so much more to look forward to today. This policy conference, as you may have heard, is the largest in AIPAC's history, and it's an incredible testament to the size and the scope of American support for the U.S.-Israel relationship. We've gathered in the thousands from all across the country to demonstrate our unity, our passion, and our commitment to Israel's security. My husband John and I have been coming to Policy Conference for many years, but we've never been more impressed with the sheer outpouring of dedication towards this great cause than we are this year. And we all know there is much more work to do. Each one of us will be called upon to continue our leadership, to increase our involvement, and to ensure that our community will only grow stronger in the year ahead. We need to make sure that next year we'll be back in D.C. for an even larger showing of support, for an even larger display of unity, and for an even larger policy conference. So, if you haven't done it already, make sure to reserve seats for you and your family for Policy Conference 2015. You can register using either your AIPAC app on your iPhones or at a quick stop kiosk. And of course, if you register before 3 p.m. today, you can take $250 off the price. I hope to see each and every one of you back here next March. Throughout this conference, we have joined together to celebrate 66 years of friendship between the United States and Israel, with leaders from the United States and Israeli governments, representations from countries around the world, and officials from both state and local governments. As our congressional speakers have noted, the snow may have shut down some of D.C., but it did not shut down AIPAC. Despite the winter storm that forced the federal government to close, thousands of flights to be canceled, and votes in the Senate to be delayed, we still had remarkable representation from our elected officials. We are honored to have been joined at this year's conference by hundreds of leaders from the executive branch, the Senate, the House of Representatives, leaders of America's diplomatic corps, and candidates for office, as well as leaders from the Knesset and ambassadors from countries throughout the world. Please join me in thanking all of us that braved the cold and the snow to stand with us here at AIPAC. Now, I want to take a moment this morning to honor the legacies of two legendary statesmen who passed away this year, and all the work they did to ensure the safety and the security of these two great nations. Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon embodied the indomitable spirit and passion of the Jewish state. He was an extraordinary military strategist who knew the price of war and was willing to take courageous risks for peace. We remember Arik Sharon as a heroic warrior and a leader whose life was dedicated to the peace and security of America's democratic ally. This year, we also bid farewell to Senator Frank Lautenberg, a tireless advocate for the U.S.-Israel relationship. He also was someone who strongly advocated for the human rights of Jews and persecuted peoples throughout the world. Senator Lautenberg's leadership will be sorely missed, and although he is no longer with us, his legacy of commitment to the Jewish people will long endure. I'd like to take this opportunity now to recognize the men and women of the United States Armed Forces whose commitment to our country enables us to celebrate on occasions such as this. Thank you, thank you, thank you to those who've served, and thank you to those who continue to serve. As you can see, together, we have brought a palpable energy to this convention center and to this city. And today, that energy will make its way from the convention center halls to the steps of Capitol Hill. I am excited to announce that later this afternoon, we will hold lobbying meetings at the offices of all 100 senators and every single member of the House of Representatives. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you for the work you do. Thank you for being here in Washington. And thank you for your unending commitment to a safe and secure Jewish state. Thank you.
Well, I live in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, and I can't stand politics. I guess I personally view it as a necessary evil. Sometimes it's really good to get out of your comfort zone and to go and meet people and to build new relationships. Initially, Robin and I had contributed to AIPAC. We quickly learned that it's incredibly important to be active in politics as a pro-Israel advocate. And that involves not only supporting AIPAC as an organization, but supporting candidates and legislators who believe in a strong U.S.-Israel relationship. I've unfortunately had a chronic back problem for 20-plus years. And the way that I've dealt with it is to keep myself in good physical condition, keeping my core strong, keeping active. In March of last year, I was rushed into emergency surgery. I had a rupture of a disc up in my lumbar spine. It rendered me, in essence, paralyzed. The doctors felt that I might never walk again. My friends from AIPAC, when I was in the hospital, called me and said, listen, we just want you to focus on getting better. Don't worry about us and what we're doing. And my feeling was, I am going to work on getting better, but I'm not going to stop thinking about and doing what I can for the U.S.-Israel relationship, because it's not going away. The problems aren't going away because I can't get up and walk.
My question is, what if
I honestly feel that I've been tremendously blessed by the people in AIPAC who live in this community. They're incredibly dedicated, incredibly talented, and they're wonderful mentors.
You really should follow up with a personal phone call. Split up that
well, when you pick up the paper, you see that Congress is turning over much more rapidly than it ever has before, and there are many, 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 many new legislators coming to Washington. And it's our job, and AIPAC's job, to educate them on the importance of the U.S.-Israel relationship and to push it up higher in their pile of to-do list. Well, in order to build a strong relationship, I think it's similar to making your body strong. You have to consistently work at it. You have to build a rapport on a personal level. You have to develop personal connection such that when it's time to really put the pedal to the metal, that connection is there. And that only comes with a lot of hard work in advance. You're lying in bed, not able to move your legs, and really able to sit and think about what's important to you in your life and what you'd like to accomplish with the rest of it if you're giving it back. You know, there's my family, and there are my friends, and there are a handful of things that I care about, and one of them is the continued existence of the state of Israel. And I thought that, if my, forebears could build a country in the desert with no resources, and all the odds against them, surely I could force myself to walk. And after doing that, I thought that, well, maybe I should get much, much more involved in the work of AIPAC, and I think I can make a difference.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome AIPAC activist Harvey Hannerfeld.
I can honestly say it is great to stand here with you today. I'm not a great fan of public speaking, so here's the thing. If you live in the D.C. area like I do, or thousands of miles away, being involved in pro-Israel politics gives us the opportunity to talk with our country's leaders about the issues that matter to us. So I encourage each of you in the year ahead, increase your political involvement. Contribute to candidates who share your values and opinions. One thing that Robin and I have learned this past year is that tomorrow is uncertain. Whatever you plan to do, do it. Don't wait for more time, better ability, or greater resources. Life has a way of getting more complicated. The issues facing our world certainly aren't getting any easier, and the risks facing Israel are increasing. So when we are up on the hill together in just a little while, take a minute, look around, take in the scene, enjoy it, and know that what we do matters. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Chairman of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations, Robert Sugarman.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am privileged to bring greetings from the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. I first want to express my deep admiration and respect for your presidents with whom I've worked, Lee Rosenberg and Michael Kassin, and for Bob Cohen, with whom I look forward to working. When I was elected last spring, I asked Malcolm Hoenlein, the conference's amazing executive vice chairman, with whom should I consult to better understand the issues that confront the conference. At the top of his list was Howard Corr, and that was good advice. In an hour, Howard took me through the issues in a clear and balanced way. I valued that and have valued his wise counsel since. It is truly inspiring to be at this conference with such a diverse group of pro-Israel Americans, hailing from every state in the Union and all walks of life. including, as a point of personal privilege, over 100 members of our synagogue, Congregation Kehilath Yeshurun in Manhattan, led by our rabbis Haskell Lookstein and Eli Weinstock. I had to say that or I wouldn't get an aliyah in shul on Shabbos. We all come to Washington unified in the belief that Israel and the United States embody a sense of values that define both nations and are a beacon to the free world. And we gather here with the collective goal of strengthening this great alliance, which is one of the primary missions of the Conference of Presidents. Last year, the conference celebrated its 50th anniversary as the umbrella organization of the American Jewish community. We have 50 members representing all religious streams and the whole spectrum of pro-Israel organizations. The motto of the conference is strength through unity. And while some in the conference have different views, we express our disagreements respectfully, and we are unified in our commitment to preserve the state of Israel as a safe and secure Jewish and democratic state. One more thing. Some have expressed the view that the younger generation does not relate to the so-called establishment organizations and does not support Israel as did their parents and grandparents. More experienced analysts maintain that their parents and grandparents were just as involved or uninvolved as they are when their parents and grandparents were their age. I personally am not concerned. The newest member of the Conference of Presidents is AIPAC, with chapters on college campuses all over the country and an active alumni network. ADL, which I chaired, chairman of the conference, has a young leadership program in every one of our 28 regional offices, which culminates in a trip to this city in April. Anyone who doubts the involvement, commitment, and dedication of our young people should attend that conference. And finally, one need only walk around this convention center and see the many, I'm told 2,300 young people who are here supporting Israel and AIPAC to feel comfortable and optimistic about their commitment and dedication. AIPAC is a valued member of the conference, and I look forward to working with Bob and Howard to achieve the goals we all share. Thank you again for the privilege of being with you and for all the work you do.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Service Employees International Union Local 87 President Olga Miranda.
Good morning, AIPAC. Come on the right. Good morning, AIPAC. All the way in the back, because I sat there yesterday. Good morning, AIPAC. Before I begin, can I please ask everyone to join me in giving a round of applause for all the folks who made this convention possible. The incredible AIPAC staff and volunteers, carpenters, Local 49, stagehands, Local 22, HERE food service workers, Local 23, and 32BJ janitors and security. Can I please hear the House give them a big round of applause? Thank you very much. All right, so now that I've gotten you up, we actually, when we saw the pastor on Saturday night shut the house down in such an incredible way where everybody could feel the synergy that just went through this entire convention room. I said to my colleagues that we've been walking in the convention, attending several of the workshops, next year the challenge will be for the Latinos that are attending the convention to bring the mariachi at AIPAC. This has been an incredible weekend, an incredible experience, and can only be described, in my humble opinion, and I hope for the politically correct in the room, which we all are, by the way, do not get offended when I describe that the convention of AIPAC can only be described, in my words, as a Jewish Super Bowl. It's been incredible. You see the intergenerations from young to old. I saw uncles. I had the pleasure of sitting with an uncle and his nephew, and that his uncle had brought him, and it was a really beautiful personal story. I met Ari and Shelly, who are the parents of one of the AIPAC staff, and I had the wonderful experience of breaking bread with them on Saturday. So now I'm moving on to the Spanish lesson of the day. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, so you guys are going to be learning two things today, and then you will join me at the very end of my speech in repeating that to see if you guys all got it right. One, mi causa. Come on, you guys can do better than that. Mi causa. Sí se puede. Sí se puede. The translation of those two is, mi causa is my cause, and si se puede is yes, we can. Which is not only for me the theme of this weekend, but also the responsibility we all carry as Latinos, as a Jewish community, and I'll come back to that in a minute. I am a union leader. I am Joaquin's mother. I am one of 9 children raised by a single mother. I am a Chicana, and I am AIPAC, okay? Thank you. I walk picket lines, never walk away from a good fight. I lead rallies, I negotiate fair wages and health care coverage for my members. The workers and families that I represent and the allies we have created, they are all mi causa. Several years ago, if anyone had asked me what I thought about what was happening in the Middle East, I only knew what I saw on TV. But as a Latina, my immediate response was, it's terrible what's happening to the Palestinians. You see, as Latinos, we identify with the narrative of the underdog and the disenfranchised. You can't blame us because that's the experience that we go through, our community goes through on a daily basis, struggling to be able to provide for our families. But when you're raised by a single mother, a Mexican single mother, you acquire in a household of 9 kids certain life skills that will stay with you forever. Forever. For example, never, ever leave your plate unattended. Learn to share when your mother is watching. Take care of each other. And finally, there are always 2 sides to the story. The media in the United States, however, has not learned the last point, that there are always 2 sides to a story when it comes to Israel. Thank you. I have to introduce the media to my mother so that they can understand that part. In 2012, I received a call from someone who I thought was selling a timeshare. And I'm really proud of AIPAC because they have picked staff that speak so quickly that even Latinos don't understand it, okay? So I'm really proud that AIPAC has really gone out of their way to get somebody that even amongst ourselves we don't understand each other. But I thought initially he was selling me a timeshare. And you have to put this into perspective because at that time, Israel was under attack. Israel was under attack. So a timeshare being sold to me around that time was, besides being nuts, was not where I wanted to go vacation, okay? He invited me to travel with AIPAC on the American Israel Education Foundation. And I thank all of you. I thank all of you for your support and your commitment to making sure that the AIEF continues to exist. Thank you. When I arrived in Israel, it changed my life, and I was humbled, extremely, extremely humbled. I saw a young man celebrating his bar mitzvah. I heard the calls of the mosques for prayer time, and I heard the church bells. This was not the Israel I had seen on TV. And I'm sorry that when you are wrong about something, it shakes you because you think you're right you have this certain perspective and it becomes tunnel vision. But when you are proven wrong, not only do you have to be able to take that, you also have an obligation to correct it. And Israel was something I am completely wrong about. Yes, we can. ¿Sí se puede? Build a bridge between our communities, the Latino community and the Jewish community. The topic of immigration is an issue that's very close to the Latino community. Families have been separated. Mothers, fathers have been stopped at the workplace and taken and detained. This can only be described as the experience and the history of the Jewish community. How families have been torn apart, not knowing where your loved one is. And when you are asked, nobody knows. Nobody can give you an answer. That is something that our community is going through right now. But in Israel, I saw something that the world needs to be able to see, and who I now tell anyone in my circles, Israel is teaching us a lesson about immigration. In the absorption centers, I saw how Israel was teaching immigrants in a humane and dignified way how to become absorbed and how to be able to be part of the community. They were being treated humanely. For Latinos here, for families that have been affected because of immigration, this is an issue that it's unfounding. We have no, I could not come back and describe it as eloquently than to say, in Israel, immigrants are humans. All our community wants is for immigrants to be able to be treated like humans and not criminalized for wanting to provide for their families. And I think that's something that we all share in this room. I invite all of you to join the Latino community in fighting for our issue the same way that our community, through myself, through other Latinos attending this convention, will stand with Israel in its defense of its sovereignty and its freedom. While in Israel, I went to Sderot. I met with families, women, children, husbands, and grandparents that all live under the constant threat of rocket attacks. I grew up in a neighborhood where gunshots is what you heard. And it made me, besides making me very strong and very savvy, I could never fathom the thought of my son having to experience and witness rockets flying over his head. I can only say that for my son Joaquin to be an American and to have the luxury of living in the United States, that I can explain to him that even though we have this luxury to be here and live as Americans, that we also have an obligation to have that commitment, that sense of commitment to Israel as well. And that's something that I intend on passing down to my son. Shortly after coming back home, I came back with a new sense of responsibility and commitment to clarifying the misinformation about Israel. It starts at home. Clarifying the misinformation starts at home. For the students that I met yesterday that are the ones that are speaking up on campus, we need to stand with them. We need to be their backup. We need to be able to help them argue the attack on Israel. This March, I'm saying that it starts at home because this March will be 14 years that I've been married with my husband, Gerardo. And thank you. Out of all the arguments we've gotten into, where the furniture should go, he got the wrong color again. It was the wrong superhero or the Lego set. Israel is the only thing I have ever admitted to being wrong about in my 14 years. It's not a bad record, but here I am publicly admitting that I was wrong about Israel, Gerardo. I've been in very heated arguments with colleagues of mine that are in labor, that are out in my community, who disagree about my position on Israel. At the same time, these are the same colleagues that have never been to the Middle East, that have never been to Israel, that have never had a real conversation about the issues, but that still did not stop them from repeating something that, besides being wrong, was also something they knew nothing about. Where I come from, and there's somebody in the back who might beat me. Where I come from, we call that BS. I got you. Israel is about creating allies, and AIPAC is about sustaining relationships, extending those branches, growing, making everyone become an ally. You've helped me appreciate the common core values that we all, Americans, Israelis, Latinos, share. Respect for our freedom. In order to affirm that, we must be committed to wanting to be able to stand with each other. And so today, here I am to say thank you. Thank you for extending your hand to my community and your friendship to me and my family. You have changed my opinion. And I stand here today because Israel is mi causa. Israel es mi causa. ¿Se puede? ¿Se puede? Thank you very much for allowing me to be in your presence, and I hope that we see you out on the picket lines. I stand with Israel. I stand with AIPAC. I will stand proudly here in any podium on any picket line. I am AIPAC, and I thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome former CNN anchor Frank Sesno.
Well, good morning again, everybody. That's a tough act to follow, but I'll do my best. You spent most of the past few days talking about the world, about foreign policy, about the Middle East. Now we're going to ring it in a little bit and swing back home and talk about politics, domestic politics, and what's ahead. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome you to Inside Politics. So have a seat and welcome, welcome. Next to me is Whit Ayers. He's a leading Washington, D.C. political consultant. He's got over 30 years of experience in polling and survey research for high-profile political campaigns. You may know, you should know, Donna Brazil. She's vice chair of voter registration and participation at the Democratic National Committee. Next guest, Ralph Reed. He was the first executive director of the Christian Coalition, later founded the Faith and Freedom Coalition. And last but never least is my good friend from CNN and politics, Paul Begala. So, folks, let's just jump in here. And we don't have a lot of time, but we got a lot of politics. General political, let's go out 20,000 feet. 2014 is here, midterm elections. 2016 looms. But let's start in this year. We've had budget shutdowns. We've had budget battles. We have the budget today. Where do we stand? Whit, start us off politically this year.
Well, Frank, let's start off with the 30,000-foot view.
I was 20,000 feet. You're taking us.
I'm going even.
Okay,
farther.
that's good.
Tip O'Neill used to say that all politics is local. We have come about 180 degrees from that. We're almost to the point where all politics is now national. The kind of partisan divisions we're seeing in Washington are not being healed. If anything, they're filtering down farther. So the governor's races that used to be less or more removed from the Washington partisan scene are now becoming more and more partisan. So the partisan infection is going farther and farther down into the body politic to the point where all politics is national. Now, for 2014, it ought to be a great year for my side and Ralph's side. I mean, you've got the 6th year of a presidential term, which historically is bad for the party in the White House. 2006 was really bad for Republicans. You've got President Obama, who just yesterday hit a record high disapproval rating in the Gallup poll of 56%. He's at 40% approval. You've got the seats that are up, just the luck of the draw. There's only one Republican seat up in a blue state, which is Susan Collins in Maine, which he's likely to hold. But there are 6 Democrat seats up in red states and 2 Democrat seats in purple states. So the luck of the draw makes it. And finally, you've got the demographics that favor Republicans much more in midterm elections because non-Hispanic whites will constitute probably 75, 76% of the electorate as opposed to the 72% that they constituted in 2012.
So you're feeling the wind at your back. You agree?
Yes, thank you so much. Happy Mardi Gras to all of you Louisiana. And let me just say on that personal note that 8.5 years after Hurricane Katrina, once again, I know I speak on behalf of so many natives of the Gulf Coast, that we thank the State of Israel for sending the first relief effort to New Orleans in the aftermath of Katrina. So thank you so much. Now let's get on to fun. The Republicans, you know, thank God there's sunshine today. They bring a cloud to any beautiful gathering. Of course, it's doom and gloom for them. That is all they know. But for Democrats, let me just say this. While we don't have home court advantage in every Senate race, what we have is more players on the field that will help us get out a strong message of growth, of making sure that we have the health care we need and giving everybody a raise. So the Democrats, while we don't have home court advantage, what we have is more people in the stadium. The Republicans have run everybody out of the stadium. We're going to do very well this fall because I do believe that we have great candidates, we have a strong message, and that we're unified.
But Donna, you can't dispute the historical trends that
Well,
you mentioned,
nobody's scratching for the Republicans to take control of the Senate. And I do believe that while it is, look, I know what it's like to work on a campaign during a 6-year itch. I was there in 1998, and Bill Clinton defied the odds. These campaigns are going to be very competitive. They're going to be tough, but at the end of the day, I still believe the Democrats will retain control of the Senate. Unfortunately, from a mathematical point of view, which I did not major in college, let me just say that it's very difficult to take back the House given the gerrymandered nature of the districts. Democrats had over 1 million more votes than the Republicans in 2012, and yet we only captured 47% of the seats. I also believe that we have an opportunity this year to take back some of the gubernatorial seats. So while 2/3 of the American people did not bother to vote in 2010, which is why the Tea Party took over, I think 2014 is going to be a year where you see a resurgence of Democratic voters going back to the polls to vote.
Ralph, your take on this, and let me just say, since you mentioned the Tea Party, we have primaries in Texas today, and the Tea Party candidate not looking very good there.
Right. Well, first of all, let me say to those of you who are here for the policy conference, thank you for all that you and AIPAC do every day. I've been working, I can't tell you how encouraging it is to see you here. I've been working with AIPAC for 33 years. And as a Christian who defends the right of Israel to not only exist, but its legitimate national security interests, I want you to know that our community stands shoulder to shoulder and in solidarity with you every single day. And yesterday, when you couldn't get a flight from Atlanta to D.C., I got rebooked, took a train in here because there is no place I would rather be than with you this morning. Now, to the politics in the 6-year election, Donna mentioned the fact that Clinton dodged that bullet. And the reason why was because Clinton had already had his 6-year election. It was in 1994 when the Republicans gained 53 House seats, 8 Senate seats, had 2 more switches. It was the biggest landslide in a midterm election in the 20th century. Paul, you may recall that election day.
One of your better days, I think.
It's fairly memorable. So when it's already happened, it doesn't happen again at the 6-year election. Now, what's interesting about Obama is he had it on the House side in 2010, but he didn't really have it like he should have had it on the Senate side. And as Whit mentioned, there's a little bit of a luck of the draw. If you look at the races in play, there's no way to predict these. Senate races are impossible to predict. An Al Franken beats a Norm Coleman. Nobody would have guessed that a couple of years out. Saxby-Chambliss defeating Max Cleland. Nobody guessed that would happen. Thune losing to Tim Johnson when everybody thought Thune would win. So you can't predict them. But what you can say is the map looks very good for Republicans, because in addition to the open seat races of Montana, South Dakota, and West Virginia, which look very good, you have 5 of the top Senate races in the country in states where Obama's approval rating ranks among the 10th lowest in the nation, particularly places like Arkansas and Louisiana and North Carolina.
So, Ralph, let me finish up here because I want to...
Yeah, one last thing. Job approval, more than anything, drives midterm performance. Where was Bill Clinton's job approval on Election Day 1998? Most people don't remember this. 66%. Even in the middle of impeachment. When Bush lost the House and the Senate in 2006, where was his job approval? 37. Today, in the Real Clear Politics average, Obama's is 43, his disapproval is 53, and in some of these key states, it's even lower, and that's the driver.
Are you weeping?
No, I'm trying to keep from laughing. But first, thank you. Thank you all for having me. I mean, Ralph points out that I've had a very similar trajectory. I grew up in Sugar Land, Texas. In my high school, is there somebody from Sugar Land here? In my high school, there were only 2 Jews, the Levine twins. That was it. And so I didn't know jack about any of these issues until I got to college. And it was an AIPAC intern, one of my dear friends from college, Greg Goldstein of blessed memory. Haim Saban, by the way, my friend Haim Saban has sponsored a lecture in Greg's honor. He was an AIPAC intern who brought me into the fold and made me aware about the U.S.-Israel relationship. That was 30 years ago, 32. So I've been active ever since as well. I think this is a critically important thing that AIPAC has done, is that this is the only time all year that Reed and I will have a vigorous agreement. That is on the issues that affect AIPAC. Now here's where we disagree. Okay?
On everything else.
On everything else. But Whit and Ralph are right that the map is against my Democrats and history is against my Democrats, but we have an ace in the hole. We have the most powerful advantage we could have, and that is we're running against the Republicans. Oh, hell, if we were unopposed, we'd be sunk. But we're not. All of life is like that old Henny Youngman joke. They asked Henny, how's your wife? He said, compared to what? Well, how's your party compared to what? The Washington Post poll today, for example, which, by the way, has the president at 46, not 40. So that's certainly better for the Democrats and for our president. The Washington Post poll today, 68% of Americans describe the Republican Party as out of touch. Right? Which raises a question, what's wrong with the other 32? Like, what did they not, like, paying attention? So it's going to be tough for Democrats, there's no doubt. But in each of these key places, as Donna points out, we have really good incumbents in states where the president's unpopular, in places like Alaska and Arkansas and Louisiana and North Carolina. We have really good candidates, and that's going to make the difference.
Well, let me dive in state by state quickly, and then we got a lot to do in a very short time. You're watching one state, House or Senate, one race, House or Senate, that you think is a harbinger of things to come. Where do you start?
North Carolina.
Explain.
Because I don't think the Republicans can win the Senate without winning that seat. I just don't think the math adds up for them. They need a net of 6. Kay Hagan is very vulnerable. Her fave is 33, her unfave is 49. Depending upon what happens on the Republican side of the ball, these are all competitive races, and you can't predict. But if Kay Hagan is reelected, I don't think the Republicans get the Senate.
Donna, who are you watching?
Well, of course, I'm watching Mary Landrieu. She's a friend. She's been a champion.
Louisiana.
Louisiana, of course. I was her intern at the age of 17. So what else can I do at 54 but go home? There are 4 seasons, by the way, in Louisiana: shrimp, crab, oysters, and crawfish. So Mary Landrieu. But I also believe that Allison London Grimes in Kentucky, she's one to watch. Michelle Nunn in Georgia, she's one to watch. Kay Hagan is going to win, and I predict that we will see 24, 25 women in the United States Senate in 2015.
All right. Folks, we have...
On the way to the White House in 2016. Let's go. Yeah.
To accommodate the schedule here and all that's going on this stage, I'm told we have to wrap our conversation. So short, sweet, we'll leave everybody wanting more. But we cannot leave without 2016. Is Hillary Clinton inevitable in 2016?
If God answers prayers, because I'm wearing my knees out praying. Run, Hillary, run.
Who's inevitable on the Republican side?
I don't think anybody's inevitable. It's wide open. Everybody's bunched up. It depends on whether or not Christie can recover from the Bridgegate and whether or not Jeb goes.
Can Christie recover?
Wide open right now.
There's no question that it ultimately depends on what comes out, but the candidate that the Republicans will nominate will be a fusion candidate. We need to think George W. Bush in 2000 rather than McCain in 08 or Romney in 12. It's going to be someone who can appeal to the business coalition, to the Tea Party conservatives, to the social conservatives, and to the libertarians and the internationalists. So it'll be somebody who's acceptable to all factions.
And you're from Louisiana, you know a good party. Who are you going to be?
I'm ready for Hillary, but if she doesn't run, I'm ready for Kirsten Gillibrand. I'm ready for Amy Klobuchar. I am ready to put a woman in the White House. That's my view.
And who are you anticipating on the Republican side? Who are they going to run against?
Knowing the Republicans, they're looking behind. So I believe this is going to be a race that Rick Santorum will try to win.
We're just teeing up. We're just teeing up politics here. That's the best we can do. Thanks to the panel. Thanks to all of you. Have a great day.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.